On March 20, 1995, 5 men entered the Tokyo subway carrying small packages filled with a deadly nerve gas called sarin. As their trains approached the city center, each man calmly pierced his package with the tip of an umbrella and quickly exited the train, leaving the toxic gas behind. This act created a cloud of sarin that killed 12 people and injured up to 5,500 others. The entire city was thrown into chaos. Hospitals were overwhelmed and subway stations looked like scenes from a battlefield. It became the worst terrorist attack in Japan's history. By the summer of that year, authorities identified the group behind this attack as Aum Shinrikyo. This was a doomsday cult that blended elements of Buddhism, Christianity, and yoga. The group's leaders convinced their followers that they needed to start an apocalypse as soon as possible. The subway attack was not a random event. It was the peak of a series of disturbing incidents linked to Aum Shinrikyo, each one more frightening than the last. Hi, I'm Alina. Welcome to or welcome back to my channel. In 1989, Tsutsumi Sakamoto seemed to have it all. He was a rising star in his legal career, had a happy family, and had just welcomed a baby boy. He had also taken on a powerful new opponent, the Aum Shinrikyo cult in Tokyo. But in November of that year, everything changed. Tsutsumi, his wife, and their infant son disappeared without a trace. There were no clues, no notes, no explanations, leaving the police puzzled. They couldn't tell if the family had chosen to vanish or if something sinister had happened. Years later, in 1996, during the trials related to the infamous Tokyo subway sarin gas attack, an Aum cult member named Tomomaza Nakagawa was questioned about the group's past crimes. When asked about the Sakamoto family's disappearance, Nakagawa revealed a horrifying truth. Aum Shinrikyo had decided to silence Tsutsumi permanently because he was becoming a threat to their activities. Initially, the plan was to ambush Tsutsumi on his way home from work. However, the chosen date coincided with a public holiday, making it too risky. Instead of waiting another day, 6 Aum members decided to go straight to the Sakamoto family's house. At 3 a.m., the group broke into the house. Tsutsumi and his wife were asleep in their bed. The attackers quickly overpowered them. One member strangled Tsutsumi, while another brutally assaulted his wife before strangling her as well. Her final plea was, "Please save the child at least." But the cult members showed no mercy. They found the baby and suffocated him using his bedding. After the murders, the assassins loaded the bodies into their vehicle and drove to a remote area in the Japanese countryside. There, they buried the family remains in metal drums. Despite suspicions about Aum's involvement, the police failed to investigate thoroughly, allowing the cult to evade justice. This was just one of many times the authorities overlooked Aum's horrific actions. Aum, a newly formed cult, quickly figured out how to generate a lot of money in surprising ways. To reach enlightenment, members were expected to pay hefty fees, with special seminars costing tens of thousands of dollars each. The group even ventured into running its own chain of restaurants and selling computers at one point. However, the most significant source of their income came from extortion. In its mildest form, this extortion involved large-scale blackmail. The cult would inform towns and cities across Japan that they planned to set up a compound there. To prevent this, local authorities were offered a choice: pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep Aum away. Most towns, fearing trouble, agreed to pay. More dangerously, Aum collaborated with the Yakuza, Japan's organized crime syndicate, to produce and sell illegal drugs. But the most extreme and terrifying tactic was kidnapping. Members of the cult were often asked about their families' financial situations. If a member had wealthy relatives, they were sometimes ordered to kidnap them. In one shocking case, 2 sisters kidnapped their own father. An innkeeper tortured him and forced him to hand over 60 million yen, which is around $500,000. These tactics were alarmingly effective. By 1995, the cult had amassed an estimated net worth of about $1.5 billion. When Australian Federal Police raided the Bunjawarn Ranch in 1995, they walked into a chilling scene, scattered across the remote property, were the remains of sheep that died in extreme pain. Tests soon confirmed the horrifying cause. They had been poisoned with sarin, a deadly nerve agent. Inside an abandoned house on the ranch, police discovered a large chemical lab set up to produce nerve gas. It became clear they had stumbled upon a site used for testing weapons of mass destruction. The ranch had been purchased by the Japanese cult Aum Shinrikyo in early 1993, and suspicious activities were reported soon after. On May 28 of that year, something alarming happened. Local seismographs recorded a sudden spike, followed by a loud explosion that sent a shockwave across the desert. People in the area even reported seeing a fireball shoot up in the sky. After the 1995 raid, police found an active uranium mine on the property, leading to speculation that Aum Shinrikyo might have been trying to test a crude nuclear device. Although there is no solid proof that Aum actually managed to build a nuclear bomb, it's clear that Bunjawarn Ranch was the site of terrifying experiments. The group was later found to have been developing dangerous substances like anthrax and nerve agents such as sarin, some of which were tested on the local wildlife. In the early 1990s, the Aum Shinrikyo cult was already planning their deadly attacks. In April 1990, they modified a van to spray a fine mist filled with botulinum toxin, one of the most dangerous substances in the world. The group drove this van around central Tokyo, even targeting the Japanese parliament. Luckily, due to their poor understanding of biological weapons, the bacteria they used was a harmless strain, so no one was hurt. Despite this failure, the group was not discouraged and aimed for even more dangerous attacks. 2 years later, they managed to get a hold of anthrax, a highly lethal bacteria. Inhaling anthrax can lead to a painful death, often fatal even with medical treatment. Aum loaded the anthrax into large aerosol containers and attempted to spray it over Tokyo. If successful, they could have killed thousands of people. Fortunately, they had accidentally acquired a strain used for vaccines, which was not harmful to humans. The repeated failures of their biological attacks led the cult to try a chemical weapon instead. By 1994, they had developed sarin gas, a highly toxic nerve agent. They tested it in the town of Matsumoto, where it killed 8 people and injured nearly 500 others, showing their growing capability for mass casualty attacks. In 1994, Tadahiro Hamaguchi became the first known victim of a horrifying chemical weapon attack. While walking late at night in Osaka, he was killed by VX, a nerve agent so lethal that it makes sarin gas seem mild in comparison. Developed by the British after World War II, just a single drop of VX on the skin can be fatal almost instantly, leaving no time to use an antidote. For a short but deadly period in the mid-1990s, Japanese called Aum Shinrikyo used VX to eliminate their enemies. Between 1994 and 1995, they carried out over 10 assassinations using this nerve agent, usually by injection. One man who was attacked by VX spray was lucky to survive but spent 45 days in a hospital, including time in a coma. Unfortunately, this was only the beginning of the cult's brutal tactics. Aum Shinrikyo resorted to even more gruesome methods of killing. Some victims were kidnapped, hanged at the cult's facilities, and their bodies were disposed of in specially designed incinerators. One such case was that of 68-year-old Kiyoshi Kariya. He was targeted because his brother wanted to leave the cult. Kariya was abducted, drugged, held captive, and eventually killed. His body was then burned in one of Aum's incinerators, and his ashes were scattered in a lake to leave no trace. When police finally raided Aum's compounds after the 1995 Tokyo subway sarin attack, they uncovered evidence of at least 8 other people who had suffered the same grim fate. They also found a list of planned assassinations. Had the cult not been exposed by the subway attack, it is likely that many more people would have been incinerated in Aum's makeshift ovens. A central belief of the Aum cult was that followers could only reach enlightenment through suffering. While this might sound like a typical religious idea, Aum took it to a terrifying extreme. When followers didn't experience enough natural suffering, the cult created it for them through torture. One of their most notorious practices were called Thermotherapy. In these rituals, followers were immersed in scalding hot water as a form of purification. This brutal practice often caused severe burns and even led to at least one death. They conducted initiation ceremonies where members were forced to take drugs like narcotics and hallucinogens, often without their knowledge. The experience would be followed by intense public humiliation, pushing their mental limits. For those who tried to leave the cult, the consequences were even more severe. Aum had its own secret prisons and torture chambers, hidden inside large shipping containers. Suspected defectors were subjected to brutal interrogation methods and sometimes even killed. Despite all this cruelty, the cult's popularity remained shockingly high. Aum Shinrikyo, despite being a notorious doomsday cult known for torturing its followers and being linked to murders, had no trouble attracting new members. By 1995, the cult had around 50,000 followers, with most of them based in Russia. This large following gave Aum significant power and influence. In Russia, the cult's activities were particularly alarming. Within just a few years, Aum managed to establish its own university in Moscow, focusing on recruiting delusioned students. They also planned to create their own company to brainwash employees, especially during times of economic crisis. By the mid-1990s, Aum had even gained control over radio broadcasts in Vladivostok and aired nightly TV programs on Russia's popular 2x2 channel. Also sent Japanese members to train with Russian special forces to prepare for violent actions. This growing influence allowed Aum to take bold steps. They began seeking out Russian nuclear scientists and even managed to purchase a military attack helicopter. With increasing financial support, the cult's ambitions and audacity grew even stronger. After the Tokyo subway attack, Japanese police raided Aum Shinrikyo's compounds across the country in search of more sarin gas. What they discovered was shocking. The cult had built massive chemical factories capable of producing large quantities of sarin. Just one drop of sarin can cause severe seizures, and Aum was stockpiling enough to launch a countrywide assault. Sarin wasn't their only weapon. Around 80 members of Aum were busy developing other deadly chemicals like mustard gas, sodium cyanide, phosgene gas, taboon, and VX, all intended for use against civilians. In addition to this, they had set up a biological warfare lab that was constantly producing deadly agents. They were working on weaponizing anthrax, Ebola, and Q fever, each capable of killing thousands of people. The full scope of Aum's operations was becoming clear. They were also manufacturing AK-47 rifles, enough to arm a paramilitary force. The group even acquired a drone, modifying it to spray nerve agents over people. In total, Aum Shinrikyo had built an arsenal more advanced than many military forces. It's only by sheer luck that they didn't use their deadly capabilities on a larger scale. In a chilling alternate reality, the March 20 gas attack on the Tokyo subway is now seen as just a warm-up. Less than 2 months later, on May 5, 1995, two men from the Aum Shinrikyo cult left a mysterious bag in the restroom of Tokyo's Shinjuku station. Inside the bag was a deadly time device designed to release cyanide gas directly under a main ventilation shaft. If it had gone as planned, it could have killed up to 10,000 people. By sheer luck, the bomb didn't go off. A cleaning lady found the bag and moved it behind a door, unknowingly triggering a chain of events. The way she handled it caused the bomb's trigger mechanism to malfunction. When the time hit zero, instead of exploding, the bag caught fire. Though the cyanide would have still been released, nearby police noticed the fire and quickly put it out, preventing a disaster. Two Aum members were later arrested for planting a cyanide bomb, but the cult wasn't finished. Even after its leaders were jailed, they sent letter bombs to the governor of Tokyo, injuring one official. More cyanide bombs were planted on the subway, but these attacks were also foiled. By fall 1995, 1995, Aum seemed to be finished as an organization. Police raids had shut down its chemical and biological labs, and its weapons were confiscated. After causing over 30 deaths and nearly 6,000 injuries, it looked like Aum was done. But then, something unimaginable happened. If you're still watching, first of all, thank you for sticking around, and second of all, subscribe so you don't miss my next video. In the West, we often wonder why young people join groups like ISIS, known for their violence and extremism. In Japan, a similar concern surrounds Aum Shinrikyo, which later rebranded as Aleph. Although Aleph is not as powerful as it was in the 90s, it still exists today. As of November 2011, Japanese police estimated that about 1,300 people were part of the group, with 200 new recruits joining each year. Some say Aleph has changed, but others are doubtful. Despite being over 20 years since the deadly Tokyo gas attack, there are still reports of Aleph using manipulative tactics to control its members. Some followers have even been convicted of forcing their relatives to join. In the past, investigators revealed disturbing practices within the cult. The thermotherapy rituals linked to a member's death, attempts to gather sensitive information about nuclear plants, and even a plot to bomb Russia in the early 2000s. Survivors of the 1995 sarin gas attack, which killed 13 people, still see Aleph as a threat, and many worry that society has forgotten the attack. Japan's security forces agree and continue to keep the group under close watch with surveillance ongoing. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!